You can never tell what a customer's plans are with their machines after you give it back to them. The issue is that you have zero input as to what their plans are for it. That's exactly what happened to this one. It was given back to them in working condition, but after some time had passed, it now has a problem. So who's at fault then? The fixer, the customer, or was it nobody's fault? In today's video, we're going to be taking a second look at this Craftsman lawnmower. And the problem is that I was told that the self-propel doesn't work despite it working when I gave it back to them last year. The worst part is that I didn't even make a video about this mower, so I don't have any proof of it. But if I had to guess, it was probably a rush job and more than likely it wouldn't start. However, this oil looks terrible and it's dangerously low, which tells me that this mower was used a lot last year. Of course, there's nothing wrong with using and abusing your own machine once I give it back to you. But then why would you blame the fixer if part of the machine isn't working anymore? And then make the claim that it wasn't used after it was returned back to them. Tell me something. Does this look like an air filter that was on an engine that wasn't used much? I don't know about you, but if I had to guess, this engine was ran into the ground, and I mean that quite literally. Now I have to wonder, what are we going to find inside the fuel tank? So there is some gasoline inside the fuel tank, but it's kind of odd there's so little in there. Most times, when these are taken out to be used, they'll typically fill up the tank, so I gotta wonder what was happening here. Now, because of the design of this fuel tank, even though there's no visible standing fuel in it, the bottom of the tank is wet, which means there's several ounces of gasoline in there. Also, the wheels were adjusted near the bottom, which is something I don't do because when testing, I try not to scalp the grass. That means someone adjusted these wheels so they could use the mower, which goes against what they said about it. Don't forget what they said about the self-propel, that it wasn't working. But they also forgot to mention they were having rolling problems too. This small item will be important later on, so keep that in mind. Here's the problem I'm having with this entire mower. They said it was not used after giving it back to them. But as you can tell, there are problems all over this mower that's either related to major use or some kind of neglect. So after seeing all these issues, I then asked the owner more about the mower, and it turns out it's not theirs, but their adult son's. Now it's starting to make some sense. The son asked for help and the dad answered the call. They then took the mower to get it fixed, then returned it back to the son. But after an entire year goes by, tells the dad it's not working, and it never did from day one since they never used it. I'm beginning to see a troubling pattern here, but I don't want to dwell on it much more. And instead, I want to turn my attention back to the mower and get it fixed. It also turns out the brake cable is having some issues working like it should, but it's nothing that a can of lubricant can't fix. It really doesn't matter which brand of lubricant that you want to use, but just make sure you use it before it's too late. So one of the most common reasons for the self-propel not to work is a problem with the belt. The belt could have come off either pulley, but after looking at the belt, it was still on both of them. Next, we'll check and make sure that the cable that activates the self-propel is doing what it's supposed to do. So on this one, the cable rotates the transmission away from the engine, which will make the belt tight. I know there has to be a measurement on how tight the belt should be when activated, but in this case, we just want to see that it's trying, which it is. So we know that the belt is good and it's not off either pulley and the belt is getting tight. Hopefully the transmission isn't the problem. Next, we'll start it up and test it out, and hopefully we'll get a better picture of the problem. We're also going to leave the cover off just so we can see how it's working. Well, that was a little eye-opening. When activated, the belt tried to move the pulley, but it didn't budge at all. And if you hadn't figured it out, the self-propel not working and the wheels having a tough time turning are related. I know that seems fairly obvious to some, but sometimes you have to reason it out before it becomes clear. And it should be very clear that if your drive wheels are stuck, that the self-propel won't be able to make them work either. And even after taking off the nut, the wheels still won't come loose from the axle. So this is the part that's going to really test your patience and your resolve. The best advice I can give you is to spray the axle with a lubricant and try to work the wheel free from it. This could either take 10 seconds or it could take 10 minutes, depending upon how bad it is. And if you think a can of expensive lubricant's going to help out, then give it a try. Me, on the other hand, well, I'd just rather use the cheap stuff. But if you do use this method, then expect this process to take a really long time. Eventually, after what seems like forever, the wheel is spinning, but it's not spinning on the axle. And instead, the steel insert is stuck and it's the wheel that's spinning on the insert. Now this is not ideal, but it is a step in the right direction. So for my sanity, I'm going to step away from this side and move on to trying the same method on the other side. But this time it only took a little bit of effort for the wheel to come loose. And yes, the wheel did let go of the insert, but this does make it a lot easier. It means we only have to struggle with the insert and not the wheel. But after looking at the back of the wheel, what we see is a lot worse than we thought. And what we're looking at are a bunch of broken teeth on the edge of the wheel. And that means the power from the engine and transmission will never get to the wheel. And even after we free this insert and get it back onto the wheel, this side of the self-propel isn't going to work. And to get it to work again, all we'll need to do is replace this wheel, which is actually pretty cheap. I do have to tell you there's a much better way to remove the insert than using pliers, and that's because you can crack the insert. If you do crack these, finding replacements are impossible because they don't want to sell just the inserts and would rather you buy the wheels instead. Now you can absolutely do it the way I'm doing it, and yes, it will eventually come loose, but just be careful if you do. And even with this one mostly loose to begin with, it still took a lot of struggling and spraying before we got it free. And once it's free, we can then clean the axle and the opening in the wheel for the insert. We'll even apply some lubricant to the support for the drive gear in an effort to keep them from wearing out. Then we'll push the insert back into the wheel, lubricate the axle, and install the wheel. It's kind of surprising that the insert needed some persuasion, but it's a good sign that the opening isn't worn out. I'm of course going to do the same process to the other wheel, but I'll spare you from having to watch me struggle again. And with both wheels finally free, we'll then try testing out the self-propel again. And as expected, the side with the broken teeth is the side that wasn't working. So here's the strange part, not all drive wheels are made the same. And that's because if you find these gray wheels on a mower, they seem to have this problem a lot more often than other wheels. And if I had to guess, I would say the materials these gray wheels are made of are extremely weak. So what about the replacement wheels? Are they made from the same material and will they fail in the same way? Now that I'm not sure about. All I know is that I'm going to tell the owner what I found out and see where they want to go from there. And hopefully they'll be civil about the whole situation, otherwise they can take their stuff somewhere else. So my question is, has something like this happened to you before? And if so, what happened afterwards? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.